What transpires after a bear rescues a baby from a vehicle accident and takes him to the wilderness will shock you. You and the Collins on a chilly, foggy night in the Jackson, Wyoming mountains. As the family SUV navigated a dangerous road, Michael Collins held onto the steering wheel firmly, his wife Sarah seated, his knuckles white with strain. In the back seat next to him, her gaze was focused on the road ahead of their 2-year-old. Son Noah slept soundly, oblivious of the dangerous journey that the rain had begun as a light rain, but it was now falling in sheets, making it difficult for Michael to see. After hours of traveling, the steady swish of the windshield wipers did little to soothe his jangled nerves. Fatigue was starting to set in, so perhaps we should stop? Sarah's voice, Michael, shook his head, barely above a whisper, but we're almost there. Just a few more miles, please. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel if you thought this story was interesting. I continue, but the SUV's tires lost grip on the slick road as they neared a tight turn. Asphalt Michael attempted to restore control, but the car spun too late. It rolled multiple times as it veered off the road and down a steep hillside. The metal frame twisted and smashed against the trunk of a huge pine tree for a while before resting on its side. Everything was quiet for a while, except for the soft sound of rain on leaves. And then Noah was still buckled up in his car seat when a gentle whimper pierced the silence. Started to sob quietly. Bewildered and terrified by the unexpected chaos, Michael's blood flowed from a gash on Michael's forehead, while Sarah lay unconscious, caught in the debris. Her arm... The surrounding woodland was dark and hauntingly quiet, and they were hunched at an odd position. As Noah's cries became more intense, they reverberated throughout the forest with no indication of other cars or any assistance, sustaining the humid night air, and something in the shadows. Stirred by the sound of distress, a huge form appeared from the shadows, dark-skinned bear, a bloodless aroma of this wilderness's undisputed monarch, the grizzly bear. Lumbered toward the scene of the collision, its strong muses rippling under its thick coat as it got closer to the debris. The bear's keen nose twitched tentatively as it took in the strange smell of gasoline, rubber, and human blood from Noah's. As the bear approached, the cries stopped and were replaced with a wide-eyed fascination. As the massive beast gazed into the broken window, its hot breath misting the glass, the child watched in wonder. The bear smelled at Noah and used its enormous paws to pry apart the crumpled door with unexpected kindness. Stayed motionless in awe at the animal's presence. Then, in a move that marked the bears carefully removed the car seat from the wreckage, keeping Noah safely inside, defying all natural instincts. The bear, strapped inside and holding the vehicle seat in its strong teeth, turned and stumbled back into the woods, and in a matter of seconds, the accident scene was completely covered by the shadows, leaving no indication of the accident or the bear's complicity. "How is the flight safely from this CIA space?" asked Henry, no doubt having been summoned to travel with the crew for one last mission. When cars arrived, their flashing lights illuminated the grim tableau, and paramedics put in every effort to liberate Michael and Sarah from the wreckage. They were both found alive, albeit with severe injuries, but as they looked, Noah came to the terrifying conclusion that the car was missing. The rescue crew was horrified when they discovered big bear tracks close to the crash site. The ramifications were: dawn broke over the mountains, bringing with it news of the tragedy, and the coalition below the main commission chose Bob to stay back and protect the community. The community came together to organize a search for the missing child as word spread like wildfire around Jackson, a tiny town. They were having celebrations and hoping for a miracle, but they had no idea that an unlikely guardian was in the bush, far from society. The grizzly bear was keeping watch over young Noah Collins. The enormous monster traveled with unexpected care from Noah to a remote cave. As they approached the dank, dark depths of Noah's cave, they made sure the car seat stayed steady in its strong jaws. The bear carefully placed the automobile, and eyes opened in a mixture of fascination and horror. Noah remains safely strapped in as they sit on a bed of lovely moss. Observed as the massive thing grunted and sniffed as it moved around the tiny area. Despite the unusual situation, the toddler calmly displayed no symptoms of distress, instead displaying a look of, as the first rays of morning began to creep into the cave, Noah's youthful face was filled with wonder. He started to stir his tiny hands, reached out to the bear that had made its home nearby. The creature's dark eyes locked with Noah's, and then an unfathomable bond that developed between them. The bear's enormous paw that could, with a single stroke, it fell a mature elk, and then it moved with amazing compassion, carefully unclasping the bear's tiny elk more carefully than Noah crawled out of the car seat's restraints, releasing Noah from his imprisonment. Despite his awkward yet determined efforts, Noah's little hand reached out and touched the bear's rough fur, made a low rumbling noise as it leaned into the touch rather than flinching, appeared to reverberate through the cave, and as the day went on, Noah laughed, the harmless sound reverberating off the stone walls. The bear periodically returned with roots and berries after leaving the cave, carefully chewing the food before presenting it to Noah, who readily took the unusual food, suggesting that the toddler's survival instincts have combined with an instinctive faith in his improbable guardian. Back in Jackson, the helicopters searched the vast wilderness as ground crews crawled through deep vegetation in an escalated search for Noah. Jack Dawson, an experienced hunter and tracker, was among the searchers in the underbrush. Jack, who is well known for having extensive knowledge of the nearby mountains, volunteered right away after learning about the news. Having spent the most of his life discovering the hidden corners of these woods, he knew them better than anyone. Traced a thin path through the undergrowth, his thoughts racing with potential bear footprints close to the... He was extremely upset by the collision site, saying to himself, "It doesn't make sense." As he crouched to inspect the broken cliffs, the sound of his radio jack crackling interrupted Twizzler's thoughts. "Did the lad show up anywhere?" He set the microphone to negative, "but I suspect I'm moving more north. Ridge, it would be worthwhile to check out the network of caves up there. Please be cautious, Jack, and keep an eye on the weather report. Claims that a storm is approaching." Jack accepted the warning and continued hiking through the progressively rough landscape. He couldn't help but believe that this search was different from any he had ever done before the experienced. When it came to the wilderness, Tracker had a sixth sense, and at the moment all of his instincts were telling him that, as the day grew darker, something remarkable was taking place in these mountains. The anticipation of rain made the air heavy as clouds started to build overhead. Jack accelerated his pace as a chilly wind blasted through the trees, realizing that if he didn't locate Noah quickly, the imminent Jack had no idea that a storm would make the storm hurry all but impossible. But less than a mile away in a cave hidden, the toddler slept with Noah nestled against the warm, fuzzy body of the grizzly bear, surrounded by thick greenery. Calmly holding a TFT of the animal's fur in his small palm outside the furs, raindrops started to fall, signaling the start of a storm that would try the limits of animal and human endurance. Similar to instinct, The bear lifted its enormous head to monitor the shifting weather as thunder rumbled in the distance. Lovingly nuzzled Noah, perhaps comforting the sleeping youngster that he was secure at that precise moment where the boundaries between setting the scene for an incredible story of survival and improbable friendship, the animal and protective guardian were muddled. As the storm moved in over the mountains, the sky grew ominously dark. Flashes of lightning and thunder reverberated through the valleys. Of lightning flashed across the thick woodland in short, blinding rainstorms, rapidly turned the woodland floor into a perilous quagmire as it came down in torrents. In the cave, Noah awoke to the crack of thunder at the sound of the tempest outside, as another crack of thunder rang out. Cracks of thunder as the tempest outside, as another crack of thunder rang out. The toddler hid his face in the animal's thick fur, which protected Noah from the cave's entrance. As the storm continued to rage, Noah found solace in its warmth and firm presence. It seemed as though he was attempting to convey his GR to his guardian by imitating the bear's low, rumbling noises. I did not seek out all the exciting things that happened in Pittsburgh, but Jack Dorson persisted in his resolve without faltering. Not one time did he curse himself. Not one time did he panic or scream for help. Jack Dorson persisted in his resolve. There was really nothing else the villagers anywhere could do. Against the weather, visibility was almost non-existent, and the rain had wiped up any traces or indicators they might have happened if the majority of the volunteers had been compelled to retreat in search of safety from the hazardous circumstances. But Jack Dorson persisted in his resolve. He pushed through the muck, determined not to let a little bad weather stop him from spending a lifetime in these mountains. With pouring rain, Jack's thoughts strayed to a legend he had heard years before about Native Americans who had earlier lived in these mountains, told a narrative about spirit that was passed down through the generations. Bears were strong animals that protected Jack's lost children. Always wrote it down as myth, but after learning of Noah's unexplained disappearance, he discovered that by night his life was one long spell of silence, and the storm in the cave showed no signs of stopping. He changed his mind. Noah had dozed off again, his small body rising and falling with every breath of the enormous bear. Kept its keen senses tuned up to any possible dangers that might come near their Jackson sanctuary. While they were still healing from their wounds, Sarah Collins and Michael Collins held on to hope in their hospital room. Their missing kid consumed all of their thoughts, and Sarah held a picture of Noah while her tears mixed with the rain that she whispered, "I can feel it our way," and slashed against the window. "He's out there, Michael." Michael clasped her hand in an attempt to convince her that the boy was still alive, but he was battling the weight of reason in the situation. As the night went on, "We had to have faith that the searchers were doing everything they possibly could, Sarah." As the storm subsided, the wind dropped, and the rain turned into a light drizzle. Earth was disturbed by shattered twigs, which were whispering in the pre-dawn light. Only the most experienced tracker could follow the trail made of half-eaten berries, and Jack Dawson was skilled. He picked up the remaining storm clouds as the sun rose, burning them away. As he studied the signs, his brain straining to interpret what he was seeing, he whispered to himself, "It's not possible." But it was obvious that a bear went this way, and there were indications of a lesser presence, so it wasn't alone. Jack, a human child, radioed his findings base camp this, and his heart was pounding. "I have a trail, Dwanson. You won't believe it, but I believe I've—" "Jack, are you certain that's what you're saying?" The reaction was instantaneous and skeptical that the youngster may be with a bear. "Impossible. I see how Jack's eyes never left the trail when he spoke, but I'm telling you something. Something amazing is taking place here, and I will continue to follow the trail. If you can, send a backup, but advise them to, as Jack starts off again, we must approach with extreme caution so as not to surprise the bear if it is indeed with Noah. As he followed this strange trail, he couldn't get rid of the sensation that he was about to see something really amazingly. He had no idea that his voyage would not only bring him to Noah, but also cause him to reevaluate all of his beliefs. He was aware of how people and the natural coexisted as Jack Dawson walked through the woodland, following the confusing trail that Noah and the bear had left behind. His thoughts strayed to a tale that his grandfather had told him. He had told him years ago that it was a mountain folklore that had been passed down through the centuries. According to the legend, these mountains were formerly inhabited by a tribe that Jack had always written off as pure folklore, lived in balance with the natural world, and thought that some animals, especially bears, had a spiritual bond, that they were included in the fate. These guardian bears were believed to have a bond with the land and its inhabitants, safeguard missing children, and assist them in returning securely to their homes. Jack had always been a down-to-earth man who relied on his abilities and background instead of folklore, but now, confronted with the features that raised their eyebrows up to Jack's face, he found himself reevaluating his cynicism in light of the incomprehensible evidence in front of him. He stopped as he saw the ancient carvings etched into the face of a worn boulder. The rudimentary petroglyphs showed bears standing up and encircled by smaller, human-like beings. One depiction in particular, he was particularly drawn to a bear that seemed to be carrying a child on its back. "Well, I'll be damned," Jack muttered as he ran his fingers over the worn stone, the ramifications of what he saw sending a chill down his spine. So, could the ancient legends have some merit after all? Meanwhile, Noah was deeper in the woodland, and his improbable companion proceeded on their adventure, the bear moving deliberately as though on an invisible route. Noah, who was still sitting on the animal's broad back, had started to make a series of low noises and grunts that mirrored the toddler's behavior, was changing in small but discernible ways, as evidenced by Bear's own vocalizations. When the bear stopped, his motions became more fluid and animal-like, and he moved with greater confidence on all fours. Noah would descend to forage, mimicking its movements with his tiny hands to gather berries or dig for roots. The strange couple came along a swift-moving river later in the day, and the bear stopped at the water's edge, appearing to evaluate its options. Noah rubbed the animal's fur after noticing its hesitancy. Despite being reassuringly human, the gesture appeared to cautiously made its way into the river at the intersection of two universes. Noah clinging to its fur, the toddlers laughing echoed a joyful sound as they crossed the surging water, sound that reverberated off the canyon walls, a child discovering delight in the moment of unrestrained joy. Back in Jackson, during what should have been a terrible encounter, the search operation had assumed a new urgency as word of Jack's discovery spread, and although many people didn't believe that a nobody could dispute the experience of the veteran tracker, Sarah and Michael, who suggested that the bear might be protecting the missing youngster. Following Colin's eventual discharge from the hospital, Sarah clung to the hope that Jack's lost his memory. The notion was right, but Michael found it difficult to reconcile with his logical thinking because it doesn't make sense. While looking at a map of the search region, Michael explained that bears are predators and asked why. Sarah put a human child's arm, suggesting that perhaps we should have faith when the sun started to set, Michael, because there are things in this world that we don't comprehend. The track Jack Dwan had been following led him to the base of a steep cliff in the shadows across the woodland. Appeared to come to an abrupt end, and he briefly experienced a pang of despair after losing the trail permanently. But as he looked over the cliff's rocky face, something partially attracted his attention. The entrance to a cave and the path leading up to it were concealed by thick vines, was made out of outcroppings and ledges that would be difficult for a person to negotiate, but ideal for a bearjacks. I believe this is Dorson discovered them, but warned them to be careful since there is a cave up ahead and I will need support. Approach with extreme caution since we don't want to startle the bear if it's with Noah while he's waiting for help to come. Jack couldn't get rid of the sensation that something genuinely remarkable was about to happen. He found himself wishing against hope that the ancient legends were true, since the line between myth and reality was becoming increasingly hazy. Did Jack realize that an even more amazing scene was taking place within the cave? While sleeping, Noah nestled up against the bear's warm body, and in his dreams, he glimpsed glimpses of the long-gone era when bears and humans coexisted. A bond that went beyond species. It was as though the mountain spirit was communicating with him. As night came over the realm of men, secrets long forgotten were revealed. Wilder, the scene was prepared for conflict when dawn emerged from the highlands. Jack Dawson cautiously approached the cave with a small group of searchers. The morning air was clear and tense as they approached the entrance, uncertain of what they might discover. Jack signaled the others to stop and let me go first by holding up his hand inside. We momentarily startled the bear if it's in there with Noah. Jack approached the mouth of the cave and looked inside, letting his eyes adapt to the low light levels. The sight caused his breath to seize in his throat. Noah was resting soundly, curled up against the side of the enormous grizzly bear at the back of the cave. Collins, the youngster, looked uninjured despite his ragged and filthy clothes. Fact that he appeared really happy, holding a clump of the bear's fur in his tiny palm. Jack's motion grabbed the bear, lifted its enormous head, and fixed the intruder with its dark gaze. However, rather than the violence Jack anticipated, he noticed something else in the animal's eyes: intelligence, and what he could only characterize as worry-free. Jack muttered to himself, "More now." Then he carefully reached for his radio while maintaining eye contact with the bear. "This is Dorson, and I discovered that Noah is still alive and visible in the animal base camp. To be safe, but there's a problem here." As Jack explained the amazing scene to his teammates outside, Noah started to arouse the youngster, causing his eyes to open, and, with a mix of curiosity and exhaustion, he glanced up at Jack. Then, to Jack's surprise, Noah turned to the bear and made a succession of gentle grunting noises as though speaking to the animal. Bear gave a deep rumble in return, gently nuzzling the boy while Noah laughed. Music reverberating off the cave walls, it was an instant of unadulterated happiness that Jack murmured, "Oh, it's true. The legends are true," after being hit in the gut by God. Word of Noah's discovery swiftly went outside the cave, was packed with media, rescue personnel, and interested bystanders, Michael and Sarah. When Collins arrived, their faces were a mixture of terror and hope as they were informed of the circumstances. "You're telling me our son?" Collins said. Michael questioned incredulously, "Is there a grizzly bear in there? We need to get him out now." Sarah put her hand over her husband's arm and said, "Wait, Jack." As the tension increased outside Jack, "Noah is unharmed, but if we hurry in, we might agitate the bear." "Jack, discovered himself in the unique role of a mediator between the natural and human worlds, and he was aware that one Noah called softly, "It's time to come home," knowing that a poor decision could result in disaster. "Your parents are here, buddy." The child glanced at Jack before turning back to the bear. Appeared torn, as though balancing two worlds, and the bear could sense the child's anguish. It made a gentle chuffing noise and encouraged Noah to, WS Jack. Gradually, Noah started. To Jack's surprise, he began to crawl toward the cave opening, but stopped midway, whimpering and turning back to the bear. As they emerged from the cave, the enormous animal lumbered forward, remaining near Noah as though to comfort him. The crowd as a whole gasped when they saw the youngster strolling along to the massive Sarah broke away from the gathering and ran towards her kid, who was a grizzly bear straight out of a fairy tale. The bear tensed and let out a loud growl as she sobbed, tears flowing down her face. Its neck, but Noah touched its fur with a tiny hand, causing the same grunting noise. Jack heard noises in the cave and, amazingly, the bear calmed Noah. Michael joined them as he tucked the final few feet into his mother's arms, where Sarah held him close. Noah continued to think back on the family reunion, which was a happy and tearful moment of relief. The bear made quiet noises of distress, but the animal refused to back down. Observing the events with what Jack could only characterize as sorrow in their eyes, as wildlife officials entered the square for broken barriers they could not clear forward, Jack declared that this bear saved the child's life and shielded him when it might have easily. His remarks caused everyone to pause, observing Noah in his every movement. Jack recognized they were seeing something really special when they saw their parents' arms and the bear guarding them. Remarkable link between the natural and human worlds, as old as the mountains themselves. The question, what would happen to human wildlife in the future, and how would they commemorate this extraordinary bond? Relationships in Jackson Hole. In the days after Noah's amazing deliverance, the Jackson was a hive of activity because the boy and bear story had drawn attention from all across the world. The Collins family was at the heart of a controversy involving media outlets and interested bystanders from all around the world. Flurry of interviews, examinations, and debriefings, Noah appeared to suspend the disturbance and had been cleared to go, with the exception of a few small cuts and bruises. But what really captivated the physicians and psychiatrists who studied him was his conduct. Dr. Emily Noah was seated across from Chen, a child psychologist with expertise in trauma. She stared in awe as the boy wandered around in the Jackson Hole Medical Center, vibrantly colored playroom. Very nimble for sniffing things before touching them. Amazing, she said to Sarah, who was sitting close by. He seems to have adopted some IGN acts as though he left an imprint on the bear while he was in the wild. Sarah nodded, her face showing a mixture of wonder and worry. He continues making these grunting noises, particularly when he's aroused or angry, and he's been struggling to get used to eating normal meals again. Appears to like roots and berries. Jen wrote on her pad that it's not usual behaviors in youngsters who have experienced traumatic incidents are not frequent, but this is exceptional. Noah's example has the potential to completely transform our knowledge of human and animal psychology and child psychology. In the meantime, Jack Dawson was catapulted into the public eye as the person who had located Noah, and he spent hours telling wild officials about the remarkable bond he saw between the youngster and the bear. I'm telling you, scientists and journalists, he remarked, bending forward in his chair during another bear interview, understood exactly what it was doing. It possessed intelligence in addition to animal instinct. And dare I say it? Compassion. The interviewer, a woman from a big television network with a doubtful appearance, raised an eyebrow. Mr. Dawson, are you implying that this grizzly bear, who is known to us as a predator, deliberately decided to defend a human youngster Jack encountered? Look, steadily, I understand how that would sound if I hadn't witnessed it firsthand. I wouldn't believe it either, but yeah, I am saying precisely that. And I believe there is more to it than that. I believe we are dealing with an old issue that ties us to the... While Jack was speaking, his thoughts drifted to the mountains and the local wildlife. He had not yet disclosed the petroglyphs he had found throughout his hunt, since he was unclear of how to... Back at their house, Michael explain it without coming across as totally insane. Collins was having a hard time balancing the strange circumstances surrounding his son's return with the miracle of his return. Watch Noah play in the backyard from the window. The child was huddled by a group of bushes, are selecting and eating berries systematically, but he is still not speaking. As Sarah joined him, Michael remarked quietly, "It seems like he has lost the ability to speak." To give her husband more time, Sarah put her arm around his waist. Michael, Dr. Chen believes that when he readjusts, his speech should return. We just need to have patience. Michael gave a nod, but his nose stayed knit in concern. What about the bear that the wildlife officials are discussing? After what it did for Noah, moving it seems improper in some way. Although many people in Jackson saw the bear as a hero, the issue of what to do with it had become a contentious one. Others expressed concern about the risks of bringing a grizzly bear that has been accustomed to people so near to town's wildlife conservation group's leader, Linda Reeves, had been. She claimed that this is an opportunity to continue her diligent battle to conserve the bear. Confront a chance to research this remarkable species and gain knowledge from it by moving the bear would be a mistake. But Sheriff Tom Hawkins and others weren't persuaded. Even while the bear accomplished something incredible by counting, it's still a wild animal that we can't endanger our community's safety. While the argument raged on Noah's Slough, small gains were brought about by the readjustment process every day. Human gesture there, but at night, visions of the forest of soft eyes and thick fur filled his thoughts. One night, they would awaken with gentle bear-like noises, attempting to grasp for a missing buddy. Sarah discovered Noah as the sun sank over the Tetons, illuminating the valley with a golden glow. The child was making a series of low grunts while gazing intently at the far-off mountains beyond his bedroom window. "What is it, honey?" Sarah asked. Noah turned to face her while kneeling next to him. He pointed to the mountains and added, "Wide and serious bear," which made Sarah sad. Was the first full thing Noah had said since his return, and it sent a shiver down her spine. The ramifications were shocking. Could her son still have a bond with the animal that had kept him safe? Jackson Hall was enveloped in darkness as he considered how to let Noah fully return to his normal life and what to do about the bear. Human society loomed huge, yet there was more to it than these pressing issues. A mystery was developing that would test the town's connection to the surrounding wilderness and compelled them to face ancient myths that were all too real just a week after Noah saved Jackson. The little town hall was crowded with worried residents for an emergency council meeting. The main participants in this developing drama, the Collins, were seated in the middle of the room, spilling out into the street. Mayor Eleanor Thompson, Linda Reeves, and Jack Dawson's family. Sheriff Hawkins called the meeting to order since her normally calm demeanor was displaying indications of stress. Our goal is to decide on a unique set, and I promise you the only way we've gotten unique and remarkable footage of the kid was designed and manufactured, by the way, to include the She Hesitates and are called the She Hesitates style, a part of the Collins Kid adventure. Sheriff Hawkins spoke first, his voice gruff with concern, after carefully listening to all sides before bringing it to a vote. Look, I know this bear accomplished something amazing, but we cannot overlook the risk that grizzlies pose. It is a formula for tragedy when predators feel this at ease around people. The throng echoed with murmurs of agreement, and Linda Reeves rose to her feet next. She protested that this bear wasn't just any bear, and her eyes were burning with fire. Demonstrate actions that contradict our preconceived notions about the grizzlies. It's a special chance for investigation to determine whether moving or, heaven forbid, killing this bear would be a terrible error. And the discussion went on, with residents of the town sharing their thoughts on both sides. Some of them even spotted the bear. Others saw it as a sacred animal, a living representation of local culture. And others as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Naugus? At last, Jack Dawson rose, and the room went quiet as everyone's gaze turned to the rabbit. Having lived my whole life in these mountains, I am a man who has personally witnessed the remarkable attachment between a youngster and a bear. Jack started up with a steady tone, saying, I have followed bears, hunted them, and respected them as part of the natural order, but what I observed in that cave was distinct. He stopped and took a long breath, and I discovered something wonderful during my look for Noah in these ancient petroglyphs that depict bears guarding human children. A whisper went through the crowd. I believe we're dealing with something older than any of us understand, the mayor said. Thompson moved forward. Her curiosity piqued. Mr. Dawson, what are you suggesting? I'm proposing that we look at a third alternative rather than moving the bear or allowing it to roam freely, but what if we established a sanctuary or a protected area where the bear could live without interference, but where we could also research it, learn from it, and perhaps even reconnecting with something we've lost is a radical yet somehow lingering thought. Linda Reeves broke the pause, which was appropriate. Yes, we could create a sanctuary, turn it into a research facility, and invite specialists from around the globe who could establish Jackson as a global leader. As the room hummed with this new potential in wildlife conservation and research, everyone's eyes turned to the... A week ago, Michael, a member of the Collins family, rose up and cleared his throat. I would have said this was strange, but given how Noah has been impacted by this encounter and how he still feels a connection to that bear, I believe Mr. Dawson... Sarah nodded in agreement, holding Noah close, suggesting that she might be onto something. Was unusually silent during the discussion. Then he abruptly pointed to the window bear and remarked, clearly, bear come a Sheriff Hawkins walked toward the window as silence descended on the room, reflexively reaching for his holster. But when he saw the grizzly bear standing at the town's edge, he froze in place and did not move. Mayor Thompson got up to approach, just standing there as though it knew its fate was being decided. Her choice. I believe we've all just seen something extraordinary, and I suggest Rose is handed around the room as we vote in favor of Mr. Dawson's sanctuary plan. Evident majority, even Sheriff Hawkins, who hesitated for a second before raising his... The mayor then said that we would establish a protected area. For the bear with a study area to examine this remarkable creature, as the meeting came to an end, I would like Dawson M. Reeves to take the lead on this project. Excited and nervous about this daring new scheme Jack discovered, people poured out of the town hall. Still a little taken aback by the happenings outside, he accepted the compliments and shook hands. Observed Noah pulling on his parents' hands in an attempt to guide them to the town's outskirts where the bear had been. As they got closer to the scene, Jack was seen silently and dropped into step next to them. Bear turned its enormous head in their direction, and Noah broke free from his parents' hold and walked forward with Michael, tried to halt him with unexpected speed, but Sarah stopped him. Noah halted a few steps away from the bear, his eyes wide with a mixture of astonishment and dread, and he grunted softly. For a brief period, the toddler and beast looked at each other as the animal answered with a low rumble and lowered its head to the boy's level. There was a silent exchange between them, and then the bear turned slowly. Noah watched it go with a slight smile on his face as it limped back into the jungle. "Softly, bear," he replied with a pleasant expression. As they saw the grizzly vanish into the twilight, Jack, they went home, felt a strong sense of justice descend upon him. They were starting something new, something that would make them re-evaluate how they perceived nature and their role in it. But observing Noah at the tranquility on the naked boy's expression, Jack knew they were headed in the right direction, regardless of the mysteries that remained ahead. Regardless of the difficulties they would encounter in establishing this sanctuary, they were paying tribute to something powerful and ancient. As the stars started to shine above Jack, he recalled the lost but never forgotten bond between people and the nature, made a secret vow to the bear and the mountains that he would see. Regardless, the journey appeared to be just getting started in the months that followed. The projected sanctuary experienced a dramatic metamorphosis at the town meeting on the outskirts of Jackson Hall. Jack Dawson discovered that the grizzly bear heir, known by the locals as Noah's Haven, developed surprisingly quickly. Collaborating closely with Linda Reeves and a group of wildlife specialists, he helped create an area that would preserve the bear's desired natural environment while enabling close observation of it. Jack described the entire process on a site visit with Mayor Thompson in order to disrupt its regularity as little as possible. The purpose of the sanctuary, which covers several acres of deep woodland, is to teach people about this species in its natural habitat. An observation of meadowlands surrounded by a high-tech, nearly undetectable fence. Posts with cutting-edge cameras and sensors were positioned thoughtfully throughout the region. As news of the unusual study spread, scientists from far outside Wyoming's borders took notice. Donations to the sanctuary came in, attracting the attention of conservationists and even some celebrities. Regarding the development of a state-of-the-art research center on the outskirts of the sanctuary, Elena Rodriguez, a distinguished individual, a University of California animal behavior expert, came to Jackson to lead the research team. As Sarah and Jack explored the property, her eyes glistened with excitement. She was astounded by the statistics from the initial weeks of observing the bear's behavior. Keeps defying our comprehension of grisly social structure images. It appears as though it is anticipating something. Jack nodded, his forehead furrowed in contemplation. I've also noticed that it keeps coming back. Do you suppose it misses Noah at the location where we last saw it? Dr. Rodriguez shook her head in wonder. A year ago, I would have claimed that was not conceivable, but now that the sanctuary has taken form, Noah carried on with his own incredible recuperation and adjustment process. His parents had signed him up for a unique program created by Dr. Chen that blended conventional therapy with visits to the sanctuary's perimeter under close supervision. During one such visit, Sarah saw with a mix of astonishment and fear as Noah stood with his little palm at the sanctuary's edge. On the opposite side, just discernible through the undergrowth, jammed against the unseen barrier, was the enormous shape of the Noah. The grizzly bear spoke quietly while grinning broadly. A string of low grunts, and to Sarah's surprise, the bear roared back, Dr. Chen standing. "The level of communication between them is extraordinary," she said, referring to the adjacent, hurriedly scrawled notes. As the weeks at the refuge stretched into months, they created their own language, became a center of activity, drawing scholars from all over the world to Jackson in order to investigate this special connection. Between people and the town itself saw a surge in business, with new eateries and hotels opening up to accommodate the flood of tourists. But not all were happy with these changes. A loud minority, led by a Hank Grimes, a local rancher, objected to the sanctuary's existence. Hank complained at a town hall meeting that we're interfering with the sequence of things that belong in the... Despite these criticisms, the wild does not exalt the zoo. Sanctuary remained prosperous, with the grizzly bear at its center, lovingly known as Guardian. Jack stood in front of the study team one brisk October morning. The bear was in a clearing at his favorite observation location, where he was using powerful binoculars to observe Guardian. "What do you think of this?" Dr. Jack, who appeared to be making a complex series of moves while passing the binoculars, to Dr. Rodriguez's eyebrows raised in surprise as she watched for a brief moment. "Appears to be a dance, and several naked species are known to move rhythmically. However, while they watched Guardian rose, I never saw something like this in grizzlies. It was a captivating sight, powerful yet strange, as it swayed gently onto its hind legs." Jack reached for his radio as the facility's alarm abruptly sounded, saying, "What's going on? We have a breach." Jack's heart raced as he heard the frantic response from the south entrance. "It's the Collins boy." He was inside the sanctuary, and Dr. Rodriguez hurried to the south door, asking how Noah had managed to get past the security guards and other questions. Crucially, how would Guardian react as they got closer to the clearing they saw? Noah was facing the Guardian in the middle, and the enormous bear had dropped to its knees to observe the Noah. Sarah's terrified cry echoed from the edge of the sanctuary, where the youngster was listening. Security personnel were holding her back, but Noah didn't seem afraid. Instead, he started to move in a manner that was similar to the swaying motion they had saw Guardian do before. Much to everyone's astonishment, the bear joined the youngster and beast in a bizarre dance. Dr. Rodriguez and Jack gazed in amazement, hardly daring to breathe at this moment. This seemingly impossible dance seemed to represent everything that the sanctuary stood for, a challenge to reconcile two worlds. As the dance came to an end, Noah shared all they believed to be true regarding the interaction between people and wild animals. The bear growled quietly as he placed his little hand on the Guardian's muzzle. When Noah was safely back with his parents, there was a startled stillness as the boy was gently moved towards the sanctuary's exit. Jack was the one who ultimately broke it, turning to Dr. Rodriguez and grinning broadly. "Well, doctor," he said, stated that as word of Noah's dance with Guardian grew, it prompted a larger research grant. Worldwide discussion regarding the interactions between humans and animals and our role in the natural world, the sanctuary was formerly a local hub. At its core, curiosity became a symbol of a fresh perspective on conservation and conservation. Two unlikely allies, a youngster and a bear, changed how people thought about what was possible when winter descended on Jackson Hole and the sanctuary was covered in immaculate snow. People and animals genuinely connected. When the study team discovered something shocking, Dr. Rodriguez stormed into Jack's apartment. She exclaimed, breathlessly spreading, "Jack, you must see this." Her cheeks were flushed with enthusiasm. On a chilly morning at work, "We have been keeping an eye on Guardian's hibernating patterns, and he has a number of thermal imaging pictures on his desk." Jack leaned with his forehead furrowed in focus as the pictures displayed the bear's den glowing warmly, suggesting, in addition to the Guardians, there was a smaller heat signature snuggled up behind the bear. "Is that Jack?" Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her eyes almost believing what he was seeing, and the sanctuary was rocked by the news that a cub had been born to a Guardian. They mistook the Guardian's size and actions for a male, but she was actually a female, and she had been... Jack, all changes when she becomes pregnant during her entire relationship with Noah, whispered while continuing to gaze at the pictures of a mother bear guarding a human child, bearing her own, which contradicts all of our preconceived notions about bear behavior. They talked about the Sarah Collins showed up for Noah's routine visit to the sanctuary as a result of this finding, when Jack and Dr. Sarah's hand shot to her lips in surprise when Rodriguez broke the news. And Noah was aware of it. She muttered, "Young has been mentioning a Bea baby for weeks, and we assumed it was only his imagination, but the discovery of the Guardian's cube gave the study a fresh perspective and raised innumerable questions. Even the team diligently worked through inquiries regarding the bear's intentions and the strength of her seeming relationship with Noah, keeping an eye on the den during the winter and speculating about what may occur when the Guardian came out with her youngster, and the researchers and tourists to the sanctuary were filled with anticipation when the first indications of Thor appeared in the mountains in the spring. Noah was the first to notice the shift as everyone eagerly awaited Guardian's appearance from her den. During a visit to the sanctuary, he abruptly became alert and turned to face the Guardian's den, where a bear was approaching. He uttered those words with a simple smile, and sure enough, within hours, Guardian came out of her den, blinking in the intense springtime sun, and her cub was standing beside to her, wobbling on unsteady legs. The little bear's soft hair and inquisitive gaze warmed the heart, even the most stern researchers' hearts. But the Guardian's actions were what really shocked them. Guardian appeared almost as protective as most mother bears would be, yet with pride, she led her baby to the viewing area, where Noah was standing beside his parents and the study team. As the bears got closer to Guardian, he stood motionless, with a knowledge beyond his years, ceased rumbling softly a few feet away, and then, to everyone's surprise, she gently pushed her baby forward. The small bear walked over to Noah, sniffing inquisitively. After letting the cub sniff him, Noah carefully held out his hand, and then, with a Noah, patted the cub's head with such affection that it made Sarah cry. A human toddler and a bear cub meet in a moment of pure beauty while being watched over of both their moms. It appeared to represent everything that the sanctuary represented, as a sign of human harmony and nature. As word of this remarkable experience circulated, it spurred a worldwide discussion on the possibilities for development. The refuge turned into a living laboratory where species could coexist and understand one another. Although new conservation and interspecies communication paradigms were emerging, this increased new difficulties arose as a result of the surge of tourists and researchers on the resources of the sanctuary, and some people saw Noah's intimate relationship with the bears. Jack found himself at the risky point of advocating for more stringent separation. At the heart of these discussions, promoting a fair strategy that would permit further research while guaranteeing the refuge its designed safety and security, had been Kat's compelling purpose. It was a tight and sensitive RPP to walk, but he was safe for both people and bears. As spring blossomed into summer, Noah was eager to see it through, and he continued to visit the refuge, strengthening his relationship with people. With every interaction, the guardian and her child became stronger, and he appeared to comprehend the bears in a level that even the most seasoned researchers were unable to duplicate. One pleasant afternoon, as Noah was sitting close to a meadow's edge, when her cub and guardian approached the baby bear, which had greatly increased in size. With his fun personality now balanced with the onset of teenage independence, Noah started creating a series. He had created a language with the bear's guardian that consisted of low sounds and grunts. Borov replied in the grand chairman to reply from his seat on the ground, and this is exactly what goes on in the movie. Rodriguez, who was watching her cub to follow suit. Rodriguez, who was watching from a blind spot nearby, was so excited that she could barely contain it. It's unprecedented, she said in a whisper to Jack. It seems like at least they're creating a common language and a means of communication amongst species lines. Jack nodded, feeling a knot in his throat as he recalled he found old petroglyphs depicting bears and people interacting during his hunt for Noah. Had they discovered something their forefathers had previously learned but had forgotten? Was this the secret to restoring a lost relationship with nature? As the sun started to set, illuminating the sky with a golden glow, Jack observed Noah bid the bears farewell for the day over the sanctuary, clutched the guardian's leg before softly bumping the cubs' foreheads, in a gesture that reflected the moment's naked behavior. Despite the obstacles they encountered and the skeptics and detractors, Jack experienced a deep feeling of hope. One day at a time, they were rewriting the history of human-animal contact, and they were a part of something genuinely amazing. As Noah's face lit up with joy upon seeing his parents again, Jack made a quiet commitment to do everything within his power to safeguard this sanctuary and foster this unique bond between the kid and the bear, because he saw the possibility of a better, more peaceful world in their unexpected bond. A setting in which animals and people could once more coexist as partners in the great dance of gold and crimson by autumn faced its biggest obstacle to thaw when the area was engulfed in a severe drought, forcing local creatures into the sanctuary in quest of food and water for the vulnerable. Jack stood at the primary observation point, his face carved with the menace of the established balance. Concerned, Dr. Rodriguez looked around him at the arid terrain. "It's not good, Jack," she murmured, shaking her head as she pored over data on a tablet. "The sanctuary's resources are being strained by new animals. If this keeps up, we may need to think about relocating some of the wildlife." Made it physically painful to consider taking the guardian and her cub away from Noah. He had observed Jack's relationship develop and strengthen over the previous few months. Their research was based on Noah's capacity to interact with the bears, which opened up new possibilities for. There must be another way to comprehend animal cognition and interspecies communication. "We can't allow a single person to undo all of our hard work," Jack mumbled, his thoughts racing. However, while they were talking about possible solutions, a group of people saw a disturbance at the sanctuary's gate. Hank Grimes led a group of demonstrators, and their signs featured phrases like, "When the bear experiment came to a conclusion." Jack let out a deep sigh, because nature knows best. Although the sanctuary had always been criticized, the drought heightened their resistance, with many viewing it as an artificial interference that was currently damaging the larger ecosystem. When Jack saw Noah and his parents coming for their usual visit, he rushed to speak to the demonstrators. The boy's face brightened when he noticed the guardian and her pup in the distance, who didn't seem to be aware of the tension around the sanctuary. Hank Grimes spoke up, saying, Gruff, this has gone on long enough, Dorson. It is time to end this small experiment and allow these creatures to return to their natural habitat because it is disrupting the natural order. They belong to Jack, who inhaled deeply before carefully selecting his words. I can appreciate your worries, Hank, but what's happening here is crucial because we're discovering things that might. We cannot simply give up on the way we cohabit with wildlife because the debate got heated. Sarah initially heard Noah calling out as he sneaked away from his parents and headed toward his guardian and her cub. All eyes were on the child as he approached the bear's guardian, alarming Noah to wait. She positioned herself defensively in front of her cub, sensing the tension in the air. But Noah showed no fear and started to push and shove his two companions from behind. To everyone's astonishment, Guardian, he made the deep guttural noises that had become his method of speaking with the bears, relaxed, stepping aside to let Noah come to her cub. When the bear cub softly pressed its head against Noah's chest, an amazing thing occurred. Noah turned. He made a series of motions and noises in the direction of a nearby brook that the drought had reduced to a trickle. Seeming to speak with the bear's guardian, cocked her head as though paying close attention. And then the enormous bear started. Her strong claws sliced through the dry ground to dig at the stream. And after a short while, water started to flow in. Noah eagerly clapped his fists as he rose from the ground and started to assist. Using Jack, brought over a small plastic shovel, and the bear cub joined in, imitating its mother's moves. And the bears and boy cooperated to expand the hole, and the bear sat in startled stillness as soon as a tiny puddle of fresh. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to discover her voice after the water had created. She replied in amazement that Noah must have detected the subterranean water and informed Guardian about it in order to create a water source. The demonstrator's ire appeared to be subdued by the youngster and the bear's harmonious cooperation, even as Hank Grimes peered surprised. "I'll be damned," he muttered. As news of Noah's remarkable deed spread, didn't it stir a Conservationists and specialists in water management gathered to Jackson with a fresh enthusiasm for the sanctuary. Discover how the drought problem turned into a chance under this surprising human-animal cooperation. Other animals in the refuge, and Noah's special guardian, assisted in locating subterranean water supplies. Boy's intuitive knowledge of the bears, along with human knowledge and technology, resulted in the creation of sustainable water management strategies that benefited the entire area, not just the sanctuary Jack saw with pride, as Noah, who is now a few years older, led a team of scientists with assurance. And environmentalists via the sanctuary, the boy's capacity to reconcile the human-animal divide has developed into something very amazing, as Dr. Rodriguez stated. "I thought we were going to teach the bears when we first started this endeavor, but it turns out that Jack nodded with a smile on his lips, acknowledging that they had just as much to teach us. The true lesson here, in my opinion, is that we are a part of nature and not something distinct from it. When we keep that in mind, as the sun sets, there are no limits to what we may do when we learn to listen and work together." Jack was filled with hope for the future as he saw the sanctuary painted in stunning hues. The difficulties they encountered, drought, hostility, and doubts, only made them more determined, strengthened their comprehension while Noah sat with her guardian in the distance. Cub, the three of them silhouetted against the last of the light, creating a picture of the world's harmony and potential, where Jack knew with unwavering certainty that people and animals could once again coexist as friends and partners. 10 years had passed since the fateful, and they were certain that this was just the start of their incredible journey. Jackson Hall, the sanctuary, was once a contentious place where a grizzly bear saved Noah Collins that night in the mountains. Jack Dorson's project had developed into a globally recognized center for conservation and interspecies communication studies. Standing at his favorite observation tower in his early 60s, his wrinkled face creased in a smile as he took in the sight. Below Noah, a teenager was now guiding a group of young pupils around the sanctuary, while guardians walked behind him. Now a mature bear cub moves with the effortless assurance of an animal totally at home in both the wild, and Dr. Rodriguez added, "It's hard to believe how far we've come, human worlds." Joining Jack at her hair was now streaked with gray, but her eyes were still sparkling with the same zeal she had 10 years prior. Noah's research is transforming our knowledge of animal cognition. And Jack nodded in agreement. His chest swelled with pride at what Noah had become. A remarkable young guy whose special connection to the bears served as the basis for groundbreaking study. Remember that the sanctuary had grown to include a cutting-edge research facility and education center. Jack laughed when we believed we were only studying one remarkable bear, and now we're revising textbooks on connection between species when they observed Noah leading his troop to a clearing where a number of bears were assembled, and he appeared to use a number of motions and vocalizations to. When the bears were introduced to the pupils, they responded with inquisitive sniffs and soft growls, displaying none of the wild grizzlies are known for their ferocity. But it's not limited to the bears. Dr. Rodriguez said that Noah's methods are being used in conservation initiatives around the globe, and we've witnessed advancements in programs for the introduction of wolves in Europe and elephant communication in Africa. The appearance of Sarah Collins, whose hair had become gray and had wrinkles around it, cut off the conversation. Jacquelina's eyes continued to flicker with the vitality of a woman half her age. Cheerfully welcomed them, "I hope I'm not interrupting," to which Jack answered, "No, we were absolutely amazed at how far the sanctuary has progressed. How is Michael?" Sarah's smile wavered a little, but he's well, still having some difficulties with Noah's chosen course, but I believe he is improving after witnessing the worldwide impact of Noah's. The three of them watched in pleasant silence as Noah finished his task, which is finally assisting him in understanding. "Lesson!" The adolescent bid farewell to the guardian's grown cub and escorted the injured students back towards the field lobby. After a brief pause, Sarah announced, "To celebrate the sanctuary's 10th anniversary, we're hosting a small gathering tonight at the Education Center." As the sun started to set, illuminating the haven Jack discovered with a warm glow, "We would love for you both to attend the anniversary." He was surrounded by people he knew at the Collins house, which was atop a hill. The persons who had played a crucial role in turning this dream into a reality were gathered around the sanctuary. In actuality, Noah is now a lanky teenager with his mother's and father's black hair. With his piercing gaze, he effortlessly navigated among the attendees while talking about his most recent studies. Jack saw him with mixed emotions as he spoke with scientists and told his IGN friends' experiences to the wide-eyed kids. He marveled at the confident and recalled the terrified toddler they had discovered in that cave. He had turned into a scent for your thoughts, young man. A rough voice cut through his. Hank Grimes was standing next to him with a glass of whiskey in his battered hand when Reverie Jack turned around. "Hank," Jack nodded. His former adversary was taken aback, yet happy to see you here. The elderly rancher shrugged. thinking it was time to see what all the commotion was about. "I have to acknowledge, Dawson, what you've done. Something unique here." And before Jack could reply, Noah came up, his face beaming at the sight of the elderly. "I'm delighted you were able to attend, Rancher, Mr. Grimes. Did you have an opportunity to meet Rose?" "Aurora," Noah smiled, but Hank's bushy eyebrows made the Guardians born. "Come on, let me introduce you to Noah LED." Jack couldn't help but laugh as Hank talked passionately about the newest arrival to the sanctuary, the boy who enveloped the audience. Later in the evening, the ability to speak with bears had also demonstrated remarkable proficiency in transcending human differences. After the celebration ended, Jack and Michael Collins ended up on the back porch. After a while, Michael remarked, "You know, gee, looking out over the sanctuary," as the two men stood in friendly silence. "Years passed while I battled all of this, and I was terrified for Noah because I was certain that this strange bond with wild animals was real. I wouldn't be the first to interpret it this way, but I certainly think it's better than what came out of their mouths. Michael, very much, no one should be the last person to go hungry into heaven on his own." If Michael is a remarkable young man, and you and Sarah should be proud of him, Noah joined them on the porch with Dad, Jack, seemingly drawn by their conversation. Noah joined them on the porch with Dad, Jack, seemingly drawn by their conversation. Noah would remark back, "I've never been more proud of the work he's doing and the lives he's changing." Michael would remark back, "I've never been more proud of the work he's doing and the lives he's changing." Noah would interpret it that way. The three of them descended to the adolescent grizzly bear with gorgeous brown fur waited just beyond the invisible barrier enclosing the refuge. Her eyes were sharp and inquisitive, and Noah gave a succession of gentle grunts, and Aurora moved closer to the barrier in response to the motions, much to Jack's surprise. She got to her feet and positioned a pork against Noah's invisible fence. Said, "Hello, Noah," mirroring the gesture, his hand appearing to touch the bear's paw despite the distance between them. Translated his words, "I'm honored to meet my great-grandmother's friends as Jack," with a tone of amazement and delight. As he observed this impossibly difficult human-bear relationship, he was filled with hope for the future. The sanctuary began as a crazy notion, a last-ditch effort to memorialize an improbable nature. The bond between a mother bear and a lost boy had developed into a beacon of hope, something much more. Seeking a fresh sort of human-nature interaction at that very moment when the stars were shining overhead. With the soft forest sounds all around them, Jack was aware that their task was far from done, but he also understood that everything was possible with Noah at the forefront, bridging the gap between species. The legacy of a youngster and his heir. As dawn came over the sanctuary, something was just starting to unfold, and its impact would last for decades. Noah Collins was standing at the edge of a well-known clearing on a cool autumn morning. By the age of 25, he had developed into a tall, slender man with a serene assurance that brimmed with magnitude just slightly bigger than a pebble dum. He was still sprite and sharp-eyed. "Are you certain about this?" Noah Jack inquired in a worried yet enthusiastic tone, and Noah nodded resolutely. He's grinning. "It's time, Jack. We've come a long way, but there's still a big world to explore. Take what we've learned here and implement it globally." Today was the start of a new era for Noah in the sanctuary following years of groundbreaking study and conservation efforts. As he gets ready to travel abroad, his objective is to use the communication skills and, as they awaited a stir in the wilderness, the sanctuary created protection measures for endangered species worldwide. Aurora, a magnificent adult grizzly, was heralded by underbrush, walked over to meet Noah with a familiar ease, gently bumping her enormous head against his shoulder. Noah then putting his hand on her fur and briefly closing his eyes, which glistened with unshed tears when he opened them. I'll be back," he whispered quietly. "But I miss you, old friend." Jack observed the talking with a knot in his throat. He recalled the terrified child they had discovered in the forest, those years ago, and was astounded at the guy he had transformed into, and Noah's communication skills. With bears, his intuitive knowledge of animal behavior has broadened to include a variety of animals, paired with thorough scientific research, have created new opportunities for animal cognition and conservation. Under Noah's leadership, the sanctuary's research had exploded, turning what had been a contentious experiment into a blueprint for global conservation initiatives. Scholars and environmentalists from people from all over the world came to see their practices in an attempt to incorporate Noah's revolutionary methods into their own. Noah had becoming restless, though, for he knew that the real test of their labor would be using it outside of the sanctuary's regulated setting, therefore with an international significance. As the sun rose higher in the sky, he organized this ambitious expedition with a coalition of conservation organizations. When Sarah and Michael Collins arrived in the sky to say goodbye to their kid, Sarah's eyes were filled with grief, held Noah tightly, and said, "You've turned into a miracle. I'm so proud of you." Michael, who had previously doubted Noah's unconventional course, now embarks on a mission. "You're changing the world, son, and I'm proud of you. Just be careful out there." Noah hugged his father and nodded. "I'll call frequently, I swear," he said. Everyone's attention was drawn to Noah as he lifted his rucksack and got ready to cause a disturbance at the edge of the clearing. Young investigators and pupils from the sanctuary's educational program had assembled to observe. Among them was Lily Chen, a talented young biologist who had previously collaborated closely with Noah. A few years ago, Lily took a stand, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of respect and something more profound. "We'll guard the fort while you're away," she murmured in a somewhat hoarse voice. "But remember about us small people when you're gone, safe, protecting the world." Noah smiled and gave her a brief embrace, as though I wished they had more, but then found that Noah had taken the time to get their things together. As Noah turned to leave Aurora, he promised a future that had not yet materialized. The bear made a low, melancholy noise and ascended on her hind legs. Looming over Noah, turned back to the humans and put a final palm on her muzzle. He said softly, "I'll miss you too, but I'm not really leaving. When I first met the girl, everything I do outside, including helping animals and preserving habitat, is a direct result of what I've learned here." With a parting salute to his loved ones, Noah embarked on the journey that would take him from the sanctuary to the outside world, and Jack watched him leave with a range of complicated feelings, including pride, hope, nostalgia, and a hint of melancholy, he murmured, turning to Sarah, and Sarah nodded and wiped away a tear. "So I suppose this marks the beginning of a new chapter, Michael? How one incredible event can transform so many lives and ignite so much positive energy is just amazing, isn't it?" Jack found himself thinking about the incredible as they returned to the sanctuary's main complex. From that scary night when a youngster got lost in the wilderness to the amazing bond, they had all traveled the same path, created between a youngster and a bear, to the establishment of this refuge, which has transformed our perception of Noah, was now applying his knowledge of animal cognition and conservation to the world of mankind. Jack could only envision the effects of the bridges he would construct between the natural world and humanity. as when they arrived at the top of the hill, Jack stopped to gaze over the sanctuary, observed the bears moving about their area in peace, while the researchers were hard at work at their stations. As students enthusiastically absorbed information that would influence conservation's future, Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment as the tale that started with a lost youngster and a bear that protected him had become into something much bigger than what he could have ever dreamed of, had turned into a beacon of hope, demonstrating the possibility of balance between nature and humanity as the sun rose higher in the northeast corner. Bright green jaggeds, sharp as steel, swerving through the sky above the sanctuary in shades of green and gold, was not a conclusion, but rather the start of Noah's ancient world wide. A new chapter in the continuing tale of humanity's relationship with nature was beginning with the journey. World, the Kid and the Bear's legacy would keep expanding, influencing people's lives and altering viewpoints everywhere. Planet and the incredible relationship between species is found here in this sanctuary, tucked somewhere in the Wyoming Rockies. Would live on as a living example of what may happen when we allow the miracles to enter our hearts and minds. Of the natural world,